All right, so welcome back to Afterlife Among Us. This is our fourth deep dive.
Oh, wow.
And today we're going to be looking into something
Yeah.
a little different. We've talked about how modern life might be hell, and how even the smallest choices can have a big impact, and even that whole time loop thing.
Yeah.
But today we're going to be tackling the belief that everything happens for good.
hmm It's a comforting thought, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
This idea that even bad situations, they have some kind of hidden purpose.
Right.
But what happens when you just can't find that good? What about those times when life just throws something at you and there's no silver lining?
Yeah, and that's what we're really going to dig into today. Our main source is this article called "Not Everything Happens for the Best," and it gets right to the point. Challenges that whole "whatever happens, happens for good." So what's your take on that? Why do you think we're so drawn to that belief in the first place?
I think it comes down to, our need for meaning. We want to believe there's a reason, for why we suffer.
Right.
That our struggles aren't for nothing.
Yeah.
It gives us a sense of control. The world can feel chaotic and unpredictable.
Right.
But this idea that there's like a plan gives us a sense of comfort.
Right. It's like all those stories we see, someone overcomes all these huge obstacles.
Oh, yeah.
And they become successful. And those stories are inspiring.
Absolutely.
But as this article points out, they can also be misleading.
They can be, yeah.
Yeah.
Because we tend to focus on the success stories, right?
Yeah.
The ones where the good is clear.
Right.
But what about all the stories we don't hear? What about all those times when people face hardship and it doesn't get better?
Yeah, I think it does create a distorted picture of reality,
It does.
We start thinking that every setback is just a stepping stone to something amazing.
Right, exactly.
But I think that puts a lot of pressure on people. Haven't you ever been in a situation where you felt like you had to find a silver lining even when it just wasn't there?
Oh, yeah.
Like when a relationship ends or you lose a job and everyone's telling you it's a blessing in disguise or something better is coming.
Right.
But sometimes it just hurts.
It does.
And it's okay to admit that.
Oh, absolutely. And sometimes, clinging to that everything happens for good idea can actually do more harm than good. It stops us from dealing with tough situations, honestly.
Right. So it's like we're starting to see the cracks in this positive belief.
Yeah.
But, I think it's important to say that finding meaning in suffering, sometimes it can be helpful.
It can.
Like we talked about with the modern hell idea.
Yeah.
If this life is a test, then maybe finding the good is part of passing that test.
That's a great point. There's a fine line between, that healthy optimism and what some people call toxic positivity. It's not about pretending the bad stuff isn't there, but recognizing that even in the dark times, there can be good. There can be growth.
So how do we find that balance then? How do we acknowledge the bad stuff without letting it consume us, but also stay open to the good, even when we can't see it?
Well, one thing that really jumped out at me in the article was this idea that clinging to everything happens for good, it can actually stop us from seeing the world clearly.
What do you mean?
Well, think of it this way. When we're so focused on finding the good, we might miss important stuff. Like warning signs,
Right.
It's like we're wearing those rose-colored glasses.
Yeah.
And it's distorting how we see things.
So instead of just facing reality, we're trying to force it to be positive.
Exactly.
But wouldn't that make us stronger, though? If you can always find the good, wouldn't that make it easier to deal with tough situations?
You would think so, right?
Yeah.
But this article, it says that it can actually make us weaker. When we keep downplaying the bad stuff, we don't really process it. It's like sweeping dirt under the rug. It might look clean at first, but eventually it's just going to be a bigger mess.
So it's like we're building up this emotional debt.
Exactly.
But we're going to have to pay back eventually.
Right. And that payback can come in different ways. Anxiety, depression, even physical problems. And the article gives some examples of situations where that everything happens for good thing just doesn't work.
Like what kind of situations are we talking about?
Well, one that really hit me was grief. After you lose someone, the article says that even though you might move on eventually, it doesn't make the loss itself good.
Right.
The pain, the questions you have, all that stays with you.
It's like people saying, well, at least you learned to be strong. because of it.
Right.
Like the lesson makes the suffering okay.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just grief, you know? The article also talks about choices, which we talked about in The Hidden Complexity, right?
Right, right.
Sometimes we make decisions that just have bad outcomes.
Mm.
No lesson to learn, just regret. And that regret, it sticks with you.
Oh, man. Tell me about it. I still think about that time I quit my job to become a mime.
Wait, really? A mime?
Yeah, it was all invisible walls and imaginary ropes.
Wow.
Let's just say the silent screams of existential dread were very real.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a blessing in disguise.
So it didn't work out.
More like a lesson in knowing when to quit.
Right.
But, I did learn to listen to my gut, even when it's telling me to do something totally crazy.
Well, that's good at least. You found something good in it.
Yeah, I did. But the article says that if we're always trying to make things positive, it can actually stop us from learning from our mistakes.
That makes sense.
It's like we're not taking responsibility.
Exactly.
If we believe everything happens for a reason, it's easy to blame something else, right?
Right. Instead of saying, I messed up,
Yeah.
we say, it was meant to be, or the universe had other plans.
Right. And that can be dangerous.
It can.
It's like we're giving up control of our lives.
Exactly. Like we're just passengers.
But are we really in control, though? Remember when we talked about time loops and time loop redemption?
Yeah.
Even with second chances, there are some things we just can't change. Doesn't that mean there's a bigger plan?
It's an interesting thought, right? It shows how much we want to believe in something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah.
But what if the good isn't something that's given to us? What if we have to create it?
Ooh, I like that. Creating good even when there's suffering. Yeah.
Tell me more.
Well, remember the modern hell idea.
Yeah.
If this life is a test, maybe the challenge isn't just dealing with suffering,
Right.
but finding ways to bring good into it.
So we're not waiting for things to get better.
Right.
We're making them better.
It could be a small act of kindness.
Helping someone who's hurting or just appreciating the little things.
So even though those little things might not seem like much,
Right.
they can make a big difference.
Exactly. Like the butterfly effect we talked about.
Yeah, and the hidden
Reference
complexity.
Even the tiniest things can have huge effects.
So it's not about pretending everything's perfect.
No.
It's about seeing the bad stuff, but focusing on the good.
You got it. It's about
Applying.
finding that balance between accepting things as they are and still believing they can get better.
This has been really interesting. I feel like we've uncovered so much about this whole everything happens for good idea.
Me too.
It's not as simple as it sounds.
No, it's not. Life is messy.
Yeah.
There are no easy answers.
Yeah. Right.
Sometimes things are just bad.
Yeah.
And that's okay. The real challenge is how we deal with it, how we find meaning, even when it's hard.
So as we're wrapping up this deep dive into the idea that not everything happens for good, what do you want our listeners to remember?
I think the most important thing is this. Sometimes there just isn't a silver lining. And that's okay. The real growth comes from creating our own good, even when things are tough.
That's a powerful thought.
Yeah.
It means that even in this modern hell, we can choose hope. We can choose to be kind, and we can choose to make a difference.
And maybe that's the whole point of it all, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe it's about learning to create light in the darkness, finding meaning in the chaos, and leaving things better than we found them. Yeah, I think, there's a danger in just giving up on the idea altogether.
Right.
Like you said before, there's a difference between, being fake positive and having real hope.
Exactly.
It's not about ignoring the bad stuff, but finding a way to get through it without forgetting that things can get better. It's about holding on to that little bit of light, even when it's hard.
Yeah.
And that's where I think creating good comes in. It's not just waiting around, but actually doing something.
So it's about focusing on what we can control.
Yeah.
Even when everything else feels out of control.
Exactly. And there are a lot of ways to do that.
Right.
Reaching out to a friend who's having a hard time.
Yeah.
Volunteering, doing something you believe in, or even just appreciating the good stuff in your own life.
It's like those small acts of kindness.
Yeah.
They might not seem like much.
Right.
But they can spread and create something really positive.
They can. It's that butterfly effect again.
Right. From the hidden complexity.
Even small things can have big impacts.
So it's not about pretending everything's perfect.
No.
It's about seeing the bad stuff, but choosing to focus on the good.
Exactly.
This has been a great conversation. I feel like we've really dug deep into this idea.
We have.
It's way more complicated than it seems.
Yeah, it definitely is. Life is complicated. It doesn't always give us the answers we want.
Right.
Sometimes things are just bad and we have to deal with that. The important thing is how we respond, how we find meaning even when it's hard.
So to wrap up this deep dive into the idea that not everything happens for good, what's the one thing you hope people take away from this?
I'd say remember this. Sometimes there just isn't a silver lining. And that's okay. The real growth comes from creating our own good, even when things are tough.
That's something to think about for sure.
Yeah.
It means that even when things are bad, we still have the power to choose hope, to choose kindness, and to make a difference.
And who knows, maybe that's the whole point of this whole, this whole existence thing. Maybe it's about learning to bring light into the darkness and finding meaning in the chaos and leaving things better than we found them.
What a great way to end this deep dive. So listeners, we'll leave you with this. What kind of good are you creating in your life? How are you dealing with the challenges of this world? We want you to think about it. Keep exploring and share your thoughts with us. Until next time, keep searching, keep questioning, and keep creating.